And a very pleasant Tuesday night to everybody, and we welcome you to Ridgecrest Talk. I am Tom Heck, and tonight we have J.C. Meyerholz. J.C. was at one time the voice of Burroughs football. He did other sports here in the community for several radio stations, and Saracoso baseball. But most important, he was the sports editor at the Daily Independent for many years and covered a whole lot of sports back then, and has some very fond memories of some great days here in town. And we're going to let JC talk about those tonight. JC is currently working in Florida now. He's moved to Florida, and he does some things for Florida Tech University in their sports program for announcing and the internet. And we're going to talk a little bit to JC tonight. Well, JC, thanks for stopping by on your world tour.
Well, thanks, Tom. Great to be here.
And JC, why don't you talk to us about the days of Burroughs athletics when you were here in Ridgecrest?
Well, I'll tell you, it's hard to believe it was 1990, June 1990. So we're talking just about 25 years ago when I was up at a job at Yuba City in radio, and it was not working out. I was only there for 3 months, and I decided I just had to get out of there. And the funny thing was, I talked to Roy Mayhew, who at the time was the general manager of KLOA. I talked to him before I accepted the job up at Yuba City. And when I realized after about 2 or 3 months that the Yuba City job wasn't going to work out, Roy Mayhew was the first one I called and said, "Hey, Roy, this is JC. We talked a few months ago. Things aren't working out up here. Could I come down and could we talk?" So I drove overnight and stayed a night here in Ridgecrest. And Roy said, "Hey, I'd like you to come down and work for me." So that was in June of 1990. And I ended up staying in Ridgecrest for 7 years doing, everything. Burroughs football and basketball and baseball, Saracoso basketball for, Larry Bird. Eventually you got a women's program here. So when I was born, I, did some PA and stuff, volleyball. So, for me, in the sports business, it was, it was Alamogordo, Socorro. It was like my fourth sports job, and one of the better ones that I got into. I mean, after getting rolling here and doing a bunch of stuff, I did a bunch of things, and then I hooked on with the News Review and the Daily Independent. So I think I worked for every, major news outlet here in town, Tom. So, I'm back visiting here, and it's just great to be in town, and we're gonna have a big thing, big dinner tonight, and see some people. So it's great to be here.
Let's talk about Larry Bird and basketball and some of your memories and what was the atmosphere like back then?
Yeah, when I got here in 1990, it was in June, and then of course basketball had started a few months later, and of course, Saracoso didn't have the big gym. We played at the Kerr McGee Center, and did a little bit of TV of Saracoso basketball. We got a little bit of TV going with a local cable outlet here at the time, and did a few games on radio. But learned about Larry Bird and the program, and some of the players. I'm trying to remember. There was a guy named Griffin who was a very good player. Lamont Parrish, Billy Jenkins. Hey, Larry Bird, if you're watching this, we're going down memory lane here. Those Saracoso teams, it was very entertaining basketball. Larry did a pretty good job at coaching the team. Larry's main hub was Michigan, because that's where originally he was from. He'd recruit from Michigan, get a lot of good, talented, players down here. And, we had some good teams, made the playoffs, a couple times. And then, I think the big thing was, building the gym here on campus. Beautiful gym, especially for a junior college program. And, I remember doing some public address and, continue to do the play-by-play. And, again, the women's program came along and did volleyball. That was relatively new. It was great memories. Larry, great guy, great coach, very much cared about his players, and, some fun memories.
Okay, let's talk about, I know you weren't here probably for most of it, but what about high school basketball with Burroughs? Now, they had 2 CIF championships. They had one, I remember, back in about 1984. Then they also went on and did fairly well in the state tournament, which was a relatively new thing also. And we'll have more after our first break. And when we come back, JC will talk about Burroughs basketball, he'll talk about Burroughs football, and he'll talk about some of the games and exciting things that he remembers from his days here in Ridgecrest. Don't go away. This is Tuesday night. Our theme is always sports. Ridgecrest Talk right here on KZGN. And welcome back. Our second segment, if you just tuned in, I'm Tom Heck. It's Tuesday night. Our theme is always is sports. I'm with J.C. Meyerholz. J.C., the former sports editor of the Daily Independent, also does a lot of broadcasting and was a big voice back here in the early 1990s for both Burroughs High School and Saracoso College. And I just asked J.C. about his memories of Burroughs basketball and Coach Bird.
Well, let's see. Of course, Burroughs basketball, before Larry Bird took the job at Saracoso, he was the legendary coach at Burroughs. Had some great teams. Tim Allen, who's a common friend of ours, he was my sports editor of the Daily Independent, and Tim was a local guy. He's now currently living in Montana. But I wasn't here when Larry was at Burroughs, but Tim always told me the stories, I guess, about the team would eat popcorn on the bench after a game was put away and it was a blowout, and that was kind of a funny thing, I guess. But with Burroughs basketball, of course, succeeding Bird, I believe, was Frank Mazer, and he was there for a few years. And then, the year that I came was Robert Campbell's first year, and Robert and I are very good friends, great friend and everything, and did a very nice job with the Burroughs program. Now the first year was a rough one, 90-91 season. Robert, if you're watching this, I'll be gentle with you, but that was a tough year. But let's talk about the miracle year, 91-92. Robert put together a great team of Todd Mather, Scott Hansen, Travis McCullum, James Bell, and a few other players, Brandon Bayless. Well put together team. Very unselfish team. We made a nice run into the playoffs. The most exciting Burroughs game I ever did was down at Miracosta. So this is, March of 92. And I broadcasted the game on KLOA. And we got off to a horrible start. In fact, I believe we were down 24-6 in the early going. If you want to win a basketball game, try not to fall behind 24-6. Not a good thing. But we made one of those historic comebacks and won the game at the buzzer. I believe it was on a Todd Mather layup, and it was off a steal. I mean, Miracosta should have won the game, but I think we came back from a 5-point deficit in the last 30 seconds. Dramatic steal at the end, layup at the buzzer, we win, and this is at Miracosta's, gym, and of course, they were stunned, but the Burroughs crowd was going crazy. And I just remember, saying on the radio, and Burroughs has won the ball game, and the crowd's going crazy. We're going to try and get Robert Campbell on here, and Robert came on. He was all emotional. And, people who are watching this program who have lived in Ridgecrest for many years, you probably remember Ed Dilley, who was the activities director on the campus, and Ed tragically, just the following year, I think in '93. Was at one of the local car washes here and died of a heart attack. And Ed was a great guy and, helped me out that year when I was doing Burroughs basketball. But, Robert Campbell came on the post-game show and Burroughs won. And we went on and played Trabuco Hills in a game that was played at Trona, neutral site. I think we ended up losing that game by about 10 points. But, we had a nice game there. So that was kind of the start of the Burroughs basketball era and, with Robert Campbell. And, Burroughs basketball had some pretty good teams, and I guess I could tie it in with Burroughs football.
That's what we got about another minute before we do our break.
Yeah, okay.
You can start, then we'll finish in our third segment. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, Burroughs football, of course, things have kind of come full circle because Todd Mather is the current head football coach at Burroughs, and Todd Mather was the starting quarterback for Burroughs in 1991. My first year of doing Burroughs football was 1990. Pat Gilbreth was the starting quarterback, and he was a pretty good player, and Todd was the backup. The late Bob Rosseth, who was a great gentleman, good coach, good man. He coached Burroughs for I think about 4 or 5 years. Eventually, moved on. But Burroughs had fairly good teams those 2 years, and so I did 63 consecutive Burroughs football games on KLOA, and then 1 year with KZIQ. So that was a nice streak, and it was good football teams. Todd Mather, good quarterback, went on to play junior college at Orange Coast, had a pretty good impact there. I'm trying to remember some of the other players on that team, but
okay, we'll let you.
Burroughs football is really great, Tom.
We'll let you ponder that during our break. Don't go away. We'll come back for our third part of the segment. If you just tuned in, this is Ridgecrest Talk. We're on KZGN. I'm Tom Heck. J.C. Meyerholz has joined us tonight. Back after this timeout. And welcome back. If you just tuned in, our third segment tonight on Tuesday night, as always, our theme is sports. And tonight, J.C. Meyerholz has joined us. Long time ago, the sports editor of the paper here, also voice of Burroughs Sports and Saracoso Sports, and now over at Florida Tech University down in South Florida, working for them doing broadcasting, announcing, also does some minor league baseball announcing, and has been pretty involved down there. JC, let's talk a little bit about, I know you were talking football. Finish your thoughts on football, if you will, and then let's talk about sports today. In your eyes, the changes maybe, and you're up to date with a lot of different sports and how things are going, and maybe just kind of compare yesteryear with today. Your thoughts.
So Burroughs football, just finishing up. I mentioned Bob Rosseth, and again, we all miss him. He passed away a couple of years ago. Just great gentleman. I remember going over to Bob's house on Sunday, and I was working at KLOA. I would have a morning sports report, and I'd have my tape recorder, and whether we won or whether we lost the previous Friday, Bob opened up his home on Sunday morning when and again, Bob was an educator, and I don't know what percentage it is of high school coaches. Many will teach PE because they're so involved with their own programs. Bob taught history, so he had papers to correct. He was always busy on the weekends, but he would spend about a half hour on a Sunday morning and recap the Burroughs game and talk about the ups and downs. And so as far as Burroughs football, those are kind of my closing thoughts. Ron Roberts came on, did a good job for a couple of years, and then I kind of went away, but. So that's pretty much it for Burroughs. And as far as...
Well, let's talk about, I know today that you're down in Florida. I know you're a big New York Mets fan, and you follow the Jets and what have you.
And if the Mathers are listening out there, they're going to make fun of me for still being a Met fan, but it's okay.
But, it's just the salaries today have changed, what television has done. If they would have had a salary cap, maybe there'd have been more parity with baseball. Why don't they do it like the NFL does? And just maybe a lot of the mood and things have changed from yesteryear. Your thoughts?
I definitely do have some thoughts, and I don't want to offend the modern generation, but
feel free.
This is family TV, but I will say this, and I don't think I'm alone, especially you and I, and we kind of grew up in the same generation. It just seemed like sports venues, it could be, pro sports or college sports. I'll tell you, the venues have gotten a lot louder. All the music that's piped in, the walk-up music, the music between innings, all the on-field entertainment. And I understand, you bring families out, you bring kids out, you play these games, you want to entertain the kids, it's fine. But, growing up, Dobbs Ferry, New York, Mets fan, Jets fan, I'll tell you, it was a lot quieter back then. You go to the game with your family, you can talk to your dad in between innings. Now they just pipe in so much loud music. Whether you bring a date or you go with your family, it's hard to talk to people at venues. I think it's worse in basketball venues because you're inside and the noise just echoes around. It just gets really, really loud. I still love sports and everything, but I kind of yearn for the good old days before steroids and money and music. So, but I'm still a big sports fan, Mets and Jets primarily, and still, I'm living in Florida. I root a little bit for the Orlando Magic. Went to a Tampa Bay Lightning game this past year. That was good. And I do a PA for the Brevard County Manatees. That's a single-A ball club, Florida State League, Milwaukee Brewers. So, still love sports. Still love, being around it.
Mm-hmm. It's, I don't want to, keep dwelling on salary cap and what have you, but the fact that the Dodgers, let's just take the Dodgers, we'll pick on them. It's the only team I can think of that if you don't have a certain cable company, you cannot watch Dodger baseball. Now, it affects a great deal of people. If you pick up the LA Times, every Saturday when they have the viewpoint of people's opinions, it's always a big issue. Always a big issue, and people won't let it go, and I don't blame them. But I think it's kind of ridiculous when it comes to the point where, you know what, you're going to go ahead and you need all this money, and you're going to forget about your fans, maybe just to get one or two more players, where if you didn't have such a big contract...
Well, I've got a solution.
Let's hear it.
Okay. You bring in a guy like Bob Costas or George Will, and George Will, whether you agree with him on his politics, and I probably don't, but he's a brilliant guy. He's on the Sunday morning show on ABC. I think it's called This Week. I still occasionally watch that and you hear his political views, but he's a sharp guy, and he could have been the next baseball commissioner. I think Bob Costas could have done it too. But you know what? You bring Costas in, you bring Will in, you get in a room with the big wigs, with the cable representatives of the Dodgers, and you have Costas and Will listen to the arguments. Say, okay, cable company, Dodgers. What is the problem? You've got Vince Scully, who's in his 66th year of broadcasting, a legendary guy, and you're going to shut out Dodger fans, a lot of Dodger fans, from watching the Dodgers. You've got to come up with a solution, and that what's the usual solution? You meet somewhere in the middle. Can you meet in the middle? So I think you got to bring in neutral people from the outside who are knowledgeable. Maybe bring in some business people, and say, okay, we got to meet in the middle. I think the Padres were having the same problem in San Diego. Dick Enberg is doing TV down there. He's a legendary announcer. I got a friend who lives in Carlsbad. He can't watch the Padres. Unless maybe they're on MLB Network or maybe ESPN, and I don't think the Padres are on ESPN a lot. You can't watch Dick Enberg. So, this is, again, 30 years ago, things were a lot simpler. The venues at sports stadiums were not as loud, and the money wasn't rolling in as much. And now it's just a big business. And, things like this should not happen. We should not be having strikes and having games shut down. And we shouldn't be having trouble with figuring out, how we're going to split up the TV revenue. So I think you need neutral people to come in, people that are in business, who can come up with a sensible solution.
JC, appreciate your time tonight, and one of these days when you're back again, we'll have you again, and your insights, I think, are pretty right on. Whatever happened to Hell and Dell at the Dodger games in the organ? Boy, oh boy, that what a beautiful organ they had, and what great music they used to have between innings. But that's a little thing. A big thing is when you can't even watch the Dodgers, unless, even with the MLB, they'll black it out, but unless you have a cable company that carried it.
Well, I got to say this. Robert Campbell, if you're watching this broadcast, you and I have had a lot of talks on the phone about this. Robert and I keep in touch, and he's just... He's disgusted with the whole situation. So
he sure is.
Yeah.
All right, we appreciate you watching. We thanks. Our time's up for tonight. Catch us next Tuesday night, and most Tuesday nights right here for Ridgecrest Talk. I'm Tom Heck for JC Meyerholz, bidding you a very pleasant good evening. Thanks for watching on KZGN Ridgecrest.